Okay, a few more examples here. So now we're looking at what happens when you have a binomial that is squared. So you know that, say you had x squared, that is x times x. Well, if you have 2x plus 3 squared, that's the same as 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3. Just that same binomial squared. So there's two ways that you can solve. First, you can write it out like this, and then expand and simplify just as we've been doing. So 2x times 2x will give you 4x squared. 2x times 3 will be positive 6x. 3 times 2x will be another positive 6x. And 3 times 3 is positive 9. Notice that these two middle terms are exactly the same. We'll come back to that in a minute. 4x squared, simplify these two and we get 12x plus 9. So there's our final answer. Remember this, 4x squared plus 12x plus 9. The other way to solve this is like this. Here's the general form of a binomial. A and B are two different terms, and the whole thing is squared. What you end up doing, because you're squaring itself, is the first term, A, ends up squared. So you get A squared. The last term, B, ends up squared as well. And in the middle, you end up, excuse me, in the middle, you end up with 2 of A times B. So remember in the last example we had 6x plus 6x, because you end up multiplying A times B and B times A when you do the O and the I, the outside and inside of FOIL. So you end up with 2 of exactly the same term. So in this case it's 2AB, 2 times A times B. So when we put our numbers in for this one, so if we take the A term here, that's 2x, we square it. You have to square the number and the letter. So you're squaring the constant and the variable. So 2 squared is 4. X squared is x squared. So 2x squared is 4x squared. In the middle, we'll have 2x times 3 times 2 again. There's going to be 2 of those. So 2x times 3 is 6x. 2 of those is 12x. And then our last term, the B term, is 3. 3 squared is 9. And now you notice we have exactly the same answer as we got the first time, but we skipped that first step where we had to simplify the two terms in the middle into one. Either way, you'll get the same answer. Do it whichever way makes sense for you. Okay, if you have a question like this, you have a binomial that is squared, and that entire thing is also multiplied by 3. So when you expand and simplify this, you have to keep the 3 out front, expand your binomial, and then multiply the 3 by all the terms. So I'm going to do this the short way. 3x squared will be 9x squared. 3x times negative 2 will be negative 6x, but there's 2 of those, so negative 12x. And then negative 2 squared will be positive 4. Then we're going to take the 3 and multiply it by each of these terms in the trinomial. So we will end up with 3 times 9x squared is 27x squared. 3 times negative 12x is negative 36x. And 3 times 4 is 12. You could also, again, write it out as 3 times 3x minus 2 times 3x minus 2. If that's easier for you, then by all means do it that way. then again you would multiply the binomials together and then multiply by 3 and end up with this. Or you could multiply this first, so you'd have 9x minus 6, and then multiply that binomial times this using FOIL, and you would end up with the same answer. Okay, here are the hardest examples that I'm going to go over in today's lesson. Okay, here we have, here we have two binomials that we're multiplying, and here we have a constant times a binomial. We have to multiply all of this out, we have to expand all this separately, and then simplify and combine it all together. So let's get started. 2x times x, the first terms, gives us 2x squared. 2x times 3 will be 6x. Those are the outside terms. The inside terms is 1 times x, so we'll have x. And the last terms, 1 times 3 is 3. So that's this part all done. We also have a positive 5 multiplied by x plus 3. So 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times 3 is 15. Simplify this, so look here, we have 2x squared, then we have an x, a 6x, an x, and a 5x. So 6 plus 1 is 7, plus 5 is 12x, and we have a 3 and a 15, so that makes plus 18. And that's our final answer, 2x squared plus 12x plus 18. Alright, this last example, there's a lot going on here. We have a binomial and a constant all being multiplied. We also have a squared binomial over here, and that squared binomial becomes negative because of this negative sign here. So all of this will be multiplied by -1. So let's get started. Like I've mentioned already, there's 2 steps just to doing this part of it. You can multiply the constant with the first binomial so that you get 15x minus 35, and then multiply that by 3x plus 7. Let's just do this part. I'll come back to the second part. So 15x times 3x will give me 45x. 15x times 7, 105x. Negative 35 times 3x will be negative 105x. And negative 35 times 7 will be 245. Notice we have this and this, which cancel out. 105x minus 105x will give me 0. So in that first term, once it's multiplied out, I have 45x minus 245. That was, again, just from this part. I'm going to start again and show you that this works out the same way. If I keep the 5 out, let me get rid of this, and expand my binomials first. So 3x times 3x, 9x. 3x times 7 plus 21x. Negative 7 times 3x minus 21x. And negative 7 plus 7 is a negative 49. Again, I'm just looking at the first part for now, just this. 5 times 9x is 45x. Notice here we have plus 21x minus 21x. So this all goes to 0, so I don't have to multiply that by the 5 by both of those because that's 0. 5 times negative 45 is negative 245, which incidentally is the same answer we got the other way. Now, I'm going to also now include the last part of this equation. I'm going to keep my negative, and I'm going to expand the binomial that is squared. I'm going to multiply it by itself and keep it in brackets, and then I'll take care of the negative out front. So 5x squared will be 25x squared. 5x times negative 2 will be negative 10x. 2 of those will give me negative 20x. And negative 2 squared will be positive 4. So I can't simplify anything outside the brackets for now. So 45x minus 245. Then this negative 1 out here is multiplied by each of these terms. So negative 1 will make this negative 25x squared. Negative 1 times negative 20x will be plus 20x. And negative 1 times 4 will be negative 4. Now I can collect like terms. So the only x, whoops, this should be squared, this should be squared, this should be squared. Reason being I multiplied a 3x and a 3x, so that should have been 9x squared. Sorry about that. Okay, so I have a 45x squared and a negative 25x squared, so I'm left with 20x squared. So that's this term and this term are collected. We only have a 20x here. And then we have a negative 245 and a negative 4, which gives me negative 249. It's pretty squish looking, but that is my final answer. I've multiplied each of these together to get this, and I've expanded this part here to get all of this, collected my like terms, and there's my final answer.